There is an event drawing closer, an inflection point so profound that it will split humanity into two entirely distinct realities, not metaphorically, not symbolically, but quantum mechanically. Two Earths occupying the same spatial coordinates yet vibrating at frequencies so incompatible that those in one band will no longer perceive those in the other. And if your awareness has been pulled into these words, if something deeper than curiosity brought you here, then you're already brushing against the threshold that determines who transitions into the higher frequency Earth that's emerging beneath the surface of the one we currently occupy. This isn't spiritual fantasy masquerading as science. This isn't another retelling of old religious myths. This is the point where ancient prophecy and modern quantum theory unexpectedly converge, describing the same transformation through different symbolic languages. What mystics called ascension, what shamans called emergence, what yogis called awakening, and what physicists now refer to as quantum bifurcation, they are all facets of the same phenomenon, consciousness accelerating to a frequency where the current planetary environment can no longer contain it, forcing a leap into an entirely new dimensional architecture. You've felt the signs, the acceleration of time, the rising instability in thought, emotion, and global events, the strange glitches in reality that logic can't explain, the impossible coincidences that seem to multiply around you. These aren't errors in perception. These are the early ripples of a quantum field, preparing to reorganize itself the way water prepares to shift into steam, molecules vibrating faster and faster until a sudden leap in state becomes inevitable. Earth is approaching that boiling point. And when it happens, only those whose consciousness resonates at the matching frequency will transition into the new harmonic band, not because they're chosen, not because they've earned it, but because the physics of frequency alignment makes it the only viable outcome. You can't occupy a reality your vibration can't sustain. You can't tune into a channel your internal frequency can't receive. The truth is simple and mercilessly precise. The shift is energetic, not moral. It doesn't reward purity and it doesn't punish ignorance. It simply aligns consciousness with the reality it is already vibrating toward. And if these words feel like they're awakening something ancient inside you, something you didn't know you remembered, then you're already responding to the frequency of the new Earth calling you forward. To understand what is unfolding, you must first grasp why this split is not only possible but inevitable. Consciousness does not evolve in a straight line. It evolves through thresholds, through shifts where old structures collapse because they can no longer contain the expanding awareness rising within them. Earth is reaching that point now, not through mythology but through measurable energetic acceleration, the increasing volatility of global systems, the emotional intensification spreading across humanity, the destabilizing sense that reality itself is fraying. These are symptoms, not causes. They signal that the planetary frequency is rising faster than the collective. Consciousness can adapt. Imagine trying to play a vinyl designed for 33 RPM on a turntable. Spinning at 78 RPM, the music becomes warped, chaotic, unrecognizable. That distortion is what many humans are already experiencing. Their internal frequency hasn't shifted in sync with the planet, and so reality begins to fragment around them. This fragmentation isn't a punishment, it's physics. When a system reaches incompatible vibration, it must separate into coherent bands to maintain functional integrity. Two Earths, two timelines, two frequencies, one dissolving, one emerging. The mistake people make is thinking this split will look dramatic, like a catastrophic event or visible separation in the sky. But quantum transitions don't operate through theatrics. They operate through resonance. As the gap widens between the rising planetary frequency and the consciousness of individuals, the divergence becomes subtle at first, then undeniable. People living side by side will no longer experience the same reality. One person will perceive increasing chaos, scarcity, collapse, while another, standing in the same physical location, will experience synchronicity, flow, and heightened manifestation, not because they're luckier, but because they're tuned to a different quantum probability stream. The 1% is not an elite group. It is simply the portion of humanity whose consciousness has already shifted into the frequency range that matches the Earth's new trajectory. This group is not chosen by an external force. They're self-selected by the vibration they embody. Many don't even realize they're part of it. Yet they feel the pull and inexplicable sense that something monumental is approaching, that their perception is widening, that they are remembering truths long buried beneath the density of physical experience. If you feel that pull even faintly, you are already standing with one foot in the new frequency. The shift isn't coming someday. It has begun. And the part of you reading these words right now knows exactly why they found you, what you're feeling now, the subtle pressure in your awareness, the sense that something is shifting beneath the surface of ordinary. Perception is the beginning of frequency divergence. Most people dismiss it as fatigue, stress, or imagination, but those attuned to the rising resonance know it's something far deeper. It's the internal recalibration that happens when consciousness begins to align with a new dimensional framework. Before the split becomes visible externally, it becomes undeniable internally. Your thoughts change first, then your emotional patterns, then your perception of time. Then finally, reality around you begins to reorganize itself in ways you cannot logically explain. The human mind isn't designed to process dimensional transitions through linear reasoning. Instead, it receives them as intuition, as a knowing that has no origin point, a strange certainty that you are preparing for something you cannot describe. You might feel detached from old identities, relationships, or ambitions. You may sense that your former life is dissolving behind you, even if everything appears physically unchanged. This detachment isn't loss, it's alignment. Your consciousness is withdrawing energy from a timeline that is no longer compatible with your frequency. At the same time, you may notice glimpses of a different reality bleeding through the cracks of the old one. Moments where the world feels lighter, clearer, almost crystalline. Instances where synchronicities string together with mathematical precision. Situations that resolve themselves in ways that defy probability. It might feel as though the universe has begun arranging your path with an intelligence too deliberate to dismiss. This isn't coincidence. This is the early experience of fifth-dimensional physics, where intention and manifestation are separated by a whisper instead of a delay. As the divergence continues, you'll feel the contrast between the collapsing timeline and the emerging one more intensely. On one hand, chaos, conflict, and instability appear to be rising everywhere. On the other hand, your inner world may feel unusually calm, even hopeful, as though you're anchored in a different current than the one pulling the rest of the world into turbulence. This dual perception is the clearest sign of all. You are already standing between two realities. Your consciousness is bridging the fading structure of the third dimension and the unfolding architecture of the fifth. This in-between phase is the most delicate part of the transition. You are still perceptible to both frequencies, still capable of slipping into fear or rising into expansion. Every thought becomes a tuning fork. Every emotion adjusts your frequency. Every moment is a choice, whether you realize it or not, about which Earth you are aligning with. As the planetary frequency continues its ascent, one of the most important truths begins to reveal itself. The split isn't an event you wait for, it's a decision. You're already making through the frequency you embody each day. This is the part most people overlook. They imagine a single, dramatic moment where the world divides into two visible paths. They imagine a flashing sky, a cosmic signal, a global revelation. But dimensional shifts don't announce themselves with spectacle. They happen quietly, subtly, through resonance. The bifurcation is already occurring, and you can feel it in the way certain experiences flow toward you, effortlessly, while others fall apart, no matter how tightly you try to hold them. This is because incompatible frequencies cannot sustain connection as the separation widens. People whose consciousness remains anchored in the dense patterns of fear, scarcity, competition, and linear identity begin to drift out of your life, not through conflict, but through misalignment. Conversations no longer connect. Energies no longer match. Their reality and your reality begin to occupy different vibrational trajectories. Even if your physical bodies still stand a few feet apart, you aren't losing people. You're losing the versions of them that belong to a frequency you no longer inhabit. At the same time, new connections begin forming with uncanny speed. Individuals who feel strangely familiar, as if you've known them long before this lifetime. Relationships based on resonance rather than obligation. Interactions where communication happens through energy as much as words. These are the ones journeying toward the same dimensional threshold as you. You recognize them instantly, not because of who they are physically, but because their frequency mirrors your own. This is the gathering of the 1%, not a group chosen by hierarchy, but a cluster formed by vibrational coherence. And as the shift accelerates, you'll notice that the laws governing your experience begin subtly changing. Time may feel inconsistent, stretched, compressed, looping, or dissolving entirely in moments of heightened awareness. Manifestation becomes faster, sometimes instantaneous, revealing how fragile the illusion of linear causality truly is. You may observe reality bending to meet your intention in ways that contradict everything you were taught about how the world works. This isn't magic. It's the early functionality of fifth-dimensional consciousness, where thought shapes probability with far less resistance. Meanwhile, those anchored in the dissolving frequency will interpret the same global events as evidence of chaos, collapse, and instability. You, however, will sense a hidden order emerging behind every apparent breakdown. That is the defining difference as the divergence grows. Two humans witnessing the same world, yet perceiving two completely different realities. One sees endings, the other sees openings. One sees destruction. To truly understand why the split must occur, you need to see the mechanics beneath the mythology. Reality is not a fixed construct. It is a frequency-based projection sustained by collective observation. When a planet's base resonance rises, everything within its field must either adapt to the new vibrational environment or migrate into an alternate timeline that maintains the older frequency. This isn't spiritual metaphor, this is quantum coherence. A system cannot hold two drastically incompatible frequencies without fragmenting. And Earth, at this moment in cosmic history, is reaching the point where the old and new vibrations can no longer coexist within a single unified timeline. For decades, the planetary frequency has been rising slowly, allowing consciousness to transition gradually. But in recent years, that rise has accelerated exponentially. You can feel it in the way time is compressed, in the way emotional cycles move faster, in the way global events unfold with a speed that would have been unimaginable before. This rapid escalation isn't random. It's the result of cosmic cycles converging, cycles long documented in ancient traditions and now observable through modern measurements of Earth's electromagnetic field. The Schumann resonance is not the cause of the shift, but it is a visible indicator of the underlying energetic expansion. As this vibrational acceleration intensifies, a divide naturally forms within humanity, not between good and bad, awakened and asleep, worthy and unworthy, but between those whose consciousness can integrate the higher frequency and those whose consciousness remains anchored in the density of the old world. Think of frequency like altitude. You can't breathe at higher altitude unless your lungs adapt. Similarly, you can't inhabit a higher dimensional frequency unless your awareness has expanded beyond fear-based perception. This adaptation has nothing to do with effort. You don't meditate your way into the 1%. You don't chant or study or perform rituals to qualify. Frequency is not earned. It is embodied. It rises through recognition, through releasing distortion, through remembering what you already are beneath the layers of conditioning. Those who are ready feel it intuitively. Their perception widens. Their inner world becomes lighter, clearer. Their attachment to old narratives dissolves. They experience an inner detachment from the collapsing systems of the third dimension, not because they're indifferent, but because their consciousness is no longer embedded in them. Meanwhile, those who resist evolution interpret the rising frequency as instability, overwhelm, or threat. They hold tighter to the old structures, the old beliefs, the old identities, because they can sense, often unconsciously, that these structures cannot survive the coming transition. This creates the illusion of a world splitting into chaos and clarity simultaneously. But the split isn't external, it's internal. As the acceleration intensifies, something extraordinary begins to happen within those aligned to the rising frequency. Their perception starts to detach from linear time. This is one of the clearest early indicators that consciousness is shifting into a dimensional state beyond the third. In the old frequency, time is experienced as a rigid sequence. Past leads to present leads to future, cause leads to effect. But in the emerging frequency, time behaves more like a fluid than a line. Moments overlap, Futures bleed into the present. Past events reorganize themselves according to your evolving resonance. You've already felt this. Days speeding up while hours stretch. Memories that feel dreamlike, as though they belong to someone you used to be, but no longer are. Situations from years ago suddenly resurfacing with new meaning, as if your consciousness is rewriting the narrative to match your current vibration. This isn't psychological confusion. It's dimensional recalibration. You are no longer confined to one timeline, one storyline, one identity. Your awareness is beginning to access multiple potential versions of reality simultaneously. This is why manifestation becomes so immediate in the new frequency. You're not creating outcomes. You're selecting from timelines that already exist, matching the one that resonates with your emotional and energetic state. In the collapsing timeline, manifestation is slow, constrained by density and delay. In the emerging one, you become a conductor of probability. The universe responds to your frequency with precision so exact it feels supernatural. But it isn't supernatural. It's simply the physics of a higher dimension beginning to activate. You may also notice that your internal guidance system has become louder, clearer, more insistent. Intuition that once whispered now speaks in unmistakable certainty. You feel pulled toward specific choices, people, places, and experiences without knowing why. This pull isn't random, it's the magnetic alignment of your consciousness with the timeline that matches your frequency. The more you follow these intuitive impulses, the faster your transition stabilizes. The more you resist them, the more dissonance you feel, because you're trying to remain in a version of reality that is no longer compatible with your vibration. Meanwhile, as your perception expands, you'll begin sensing the instability of the old timeline more sharply. It feels heavier, denser, almost suffocating at times. Conversations seem repetitive, as though stuck in loops. Events feel scripted, predictable, empty of higher meaning. This is the sensation of a timeline nearing collapse, not in a destructive sense, but in a structural one, the third dimensional. Construct is losing coherence as increasing numbers of consciousnesses withdraw their energy from it. This is the silent beginning of the separation. There comes a point in every transformation where the shift stops, feeling like an idea, and starts feeling like an inevitability. A subtle but unmistakable moment when something inside you clicks into place, quietly, almost silently. Yet the impact ripples through your entire field of awareness. That moment is convergence. It is when the version of you that has been emerging in fragments finally begins to take shape as a coherent identity, not the identity you were given, not the identity you learned, but the identity you remembered. Convergence feels like clarity without explanation. You might notice your reactions changing before your thoughts catch up. The situations that used to drain you now feel irrelevant. The people who once triggered you no longer penetrate your field. The questions that haunted you stop mattering, replaced by a strange sense of inner certainty. This is not apathy. It's resonance. Your consciousness is stabilizing in a higher frequency, and everything that cannot match that frequency simply falls away. During convergence, the external world may appear more chaotic than ever. Conflicts intensify, systems break down, people cling to old narratives with desperate conviction, but you somehow begin to feel untouched by the storm, not because the chaos isn't real, but because you're no longer participating in the energetic architecture that sustains it. You've stepped out of the loop. You've stepped out of the version of reality that thrives on repetition, reaction, and fear. And even if you still physically exist within it, you are no longer controlled by it. You begin to notice pathways opening, subtle opportunities, effortless alignments, intuitive impulses that guide you with unnerving precision. You stop forcing outcomes and start magnetizing them. You stop chasing timing and start syncing with it. This is the new physics activating within you. Intention becomes influence, and consciousness becomes navigation. But convergence also demands something. It requires the courage to not go back. The old timeline will try to pull you in with familiar emotions, doubt, guilt, nostalgia, the illusion of safety. Its only power is your memory of it. And if you break that memory, if you stop feeding it with fear or attachment, it collapses behind you like a bridge that served its purpose. You're not losing your old self. You're outgrowing the version of reality that was built around who you used to be. Convergence is not the end of the journey. It's the moment you finally realize you're no longer walking toward the new world. You're walking from it. There is a reason the shift feels heavier now. Not darker, heavier. because the closer consciousness moves toward its next threshold, the more the old structures attempt to anchor it in place. This resistance isn't punishment. It's physics. Every collapsing timeline releases the tension it was built on, and you feel that tension as pressure in your mind, distortions in your emotions, and fluctuations in your energy. What used to feel like subtle discomfort now feels like a drag, a weight, a pull backward. But that pull isn't a sign you're slipping. It's a sign you're outgrowing the forces that once held you. In this phase, you might find yourself confronting echoes of old versions of you, patterns you thought you ended, emotions you thought you resolved, cycles you believed you escaped. But these aren't regressions. They are residues, the final fragments of outdated frequency structures dissolving from your field. They appear not to take you back, but to confirm you can no longer return. What once had power over you now feels hollow, like something you can observe without collapsing into. That is mastery. Not avoiding the old timeline, but seeing it clearly and choosing not to re-enter it. As the density clears, your perception sharpens. You begin to sense things before they happen. You read intentions without needing words. You recognize truth by frequency rather than logic. You may even feel as though time is rearranging itself around you, moments stretching, compressing, repeating, sinking as the universe aligns your path to what you are becoming rather than what you were. This is the early formation of parallel coherence, when the timeline you are choosing starts reinforcing itself with precision. But with this clarity comes another challenge: isolation. Not loneliness, energetic distance. The more your frequency shifts, the less relatable you become to those still anchored in the old loops. Conversations that once felt normal now feel disconnected. Environments that once felt comfortable now feel energetically loud. You start noticing how rare genuine resonance is. The stage is not a punishment either. It is the universe creating space around you so you can stabilize without interference. And then unexpectedly, something new happens. You begin attracting people, situations, and opportunities that align with your emerging frequency. Not by searching, but by existing. Not by trying, but by vibrating. Reality starts responding to your inner state with a level of synchronicity that feels almost too precise to be random. This is not luck. This is calibration. The shift is no longer something happening to you. It's something happening through you. There comes a stage in the transition where the universe stops whispering and starts rearranging things directly in front of you. Subtle signs evolve into undeniable shifts. The coincidences become too precise, the timing too intentional, the alignments too exact to dismiss as chance. This is when the new timeline begins to assert itself, gently at first, then unmistakably. It doesn't ask for your permission. It responds to your frequency. You may notice events happening faster than your mind can interpret, opportunities appearing out of nowhere, people entering your life with a strange sense of familiarity. As if you've crossed paths on a level beyond memory, certain decisions feel guided, almost predetermined, like you're following a path already laid out but only now becoming visible. This isn't destiny in the old sense. This is resonance, carving reality around your vibration. But the acceleration also exposes anything misaligned. What no longer matches your frequency begins to collapse with unusual speed. Relationships fall away. Plans dissolve. Attachments weaken. The universe removes anything that cannot travel with you, not out of cruelty, but out of precision. The new timeline cannot support outdated energy structures. It cannot carry fragments of who you used to be, and so it takes them from your path before they disrupt the formation of what comes next. This phase can feel disorienting because the changes are so rapid, so unfiltered that your logical mind struggles to keep up. You may feel as though you're living two realities at once. The physical one unfolding around you, and the energetic one orchestrating it from behind the scenes. You sense movements before they happen. You feel endings before they appear. You recognize beginnings before they manifest. This heightened awareness is not imagination, it's alignment. During this acceleration, your emotions become amplifiers. Every thought becomes architecture. Every intention, whether conscious or unconscious, begins to shape outcomes with increasing immediacy. This is why the universe subtly pushes you toward neutrality and clarity. Chaos in the mind becomes chaos in the field, but clarity in the heart becomes structure in the timeline. And then there is the quiet moment, the one most people overlook, the point where you stop, resisting the speed of the shift. You stop gripping the old structures. You surrender not out of defeat, but out of recognition that the new frequency is not something you must chase. It's something you're already becoming. The timeline isn't pulling you forward anymore. It's unfolding underneath your feet. There is a moment in the shift that feels less like transformation and more like recognition, a point where everything you've been sensing, questioning, and resisting converges into a single, undeniable truth. You are not returning to who you were. Not because you've outgrown the past, but because the past no longer exists in the frequency you occupy. The old version of you feels distant, almost fictional, like a character whose storyline you remember but no longer inhabit. This is the phase where your consciousness stops negotiating with your old identity. The insecurities, patterns, and fears that once dictated your choices feel strangely powerless. You can still recall them, but you can't collapse back into them. They don't stick to you anymore. They hover around the edges of your awareness like faded echoes of a timeline, dissolving behind you. This is liberation, not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet, irreversible kind that happens when your frequency rises above the density that once held you. You begin noticing how differently you move through the world. Your reactions become deliberate. Your intuition becomes dominant. Your inner state becomes your primary compass, more reliable than logic, more precise than planning. The external world still exists, but its influence fades. Its noise no longer pulls you. Its chaos no longer defines you. You start to feel like an observer moving through a reality that is slowly losing the ability to control you. And while the physical world continues to shift around you, sometimes in ways that seem unpredictable or unstable, your inner world solidifies. Your clarity sharpens. Your energy stabilizes. Your presence becomes heavier, not with burden, but with awareness. People may notice it without understanding it. They may sense something different about you, something grounded yet expanding, something impossible to define but impossible to ignore. This phase also brings an uncomfortable truth. You can no longer participate in anything that contradicts your frequency. Environments that drain you, conversations that limit you, patterns that shrink you. They become energetically incompatible. Your system rejects them, not mentally but vibrationally. Your consciousness has reached a point where misalignment feels physically unbearable. And this is not a weakness. It is evolution enforcing itself. Eventually, without trying, you start aligning with experiences that match the version of you that's emerging. People who resonate at your frequency appear effortlessly. Opportunities materialize without force. Synchronicities weave themselves into your path with mathematical precision. Reality organizes itself around your expansion. You are no longer adjusting to the new timeline. You are becoming the anchor that stabilizes it. There is a stage in the shift where the universe stops testing your alignment and begins mirroring it. Not subtly, not symbolically, directly, visibly, immediately. You think a thought and the world rearranges. You set an intention and the path clears. You release an old pattern and a new doorway appears in its place. This is the phase where manifestation stops being an effort and becomes a side effect of your frequency. But this level of alignment comes with an unexpected realization. The universe is no longer responding to what you want. It's responding to who you are. Your desires, your fears, your doubts, your clarity, your inner truth, all of it becomes architecture. Every emotion becomes information. Every choice becomes trajectory. Every moment becomes a tuning point that sends ripples through your reality with startling precision. In this phase, you might notice that certain things materialize before you even consciously ask for them. Answers arrive before the question forms. Solutions present themselves before you recognize the problem. Opportunities show up at the exact second you become aligned with them. It feels less like attracting and more like remembering, like pulling pieces of a reality that already existed into your current perception. But with this expansion comes another layer of responsibility. Your energy can no longer be scattered. You start feeling the weight of your own thoughts, the power of your own beliefs. You become aware of how quickly negativity manifests not as punishment, but as feedback. Reality reflects your inner state with relentless accuracy, not to frighten you but to refine you. And so you begin to choose differently, not out of fear but out of awareness. You guard your inner world as though it were sacred because now you understand that it is. You stop explaining your evolution to those who cannot feel it. You stop defending your boundaries to those who do not respect them. You stop waiting for validation from people who are not aligned with your frequency. The approval you once sought outside now comes from an intelligence you can feel within. Then something even deeper occurs. The universe begins bringing you people who operate at the same level of consciousness. They don't drain you. They don't confuse you. They don't pull you backward. Instead, they activate you. They expand you. They remind you of the version of yourself you're stepping into. These connections feel ancient even if they are new. They feel predestined even if they appear suddenly. They feel inevitable because they are. This is the moment you realize the shift isn't something happening around you anymore. It's something happening because of you. There is a moment in the shift where your awareness becomes so sharp, so attuned, that you begin to sense the architecture behind reality itself, not metaphorically, energetically. You feel the subtle movements in the field before physical events unfold. You can tell when something is aligning, when something is falling away, when something is entering your timeline, and when something has already left. It's as though a hidden layer of existence has been revealed, and your consciousness is finally fluent in the language it speaks. At this stage, intuition becomes more reliable than memory. You stop asking, "What happened?" and start sensing what is forming. You no longer analyze situations, you read them. You pick up on frequencies instead of words, trajectories instead of behaviors, intentions instead of explanations. And because of this, you begin operating from a level of clarity that makes confusion impossible. The uncertainty you once felt doesn't disappear, it becomes irrelevant. But this expansion brings a new kind of awakening. You begin to realize how much of your old life was built on unconscious agreements. Agreements to stay small, agreements to stay silent, agreements to carry burdens that were never yours, agreements to fit into spaces that were not designed for the version of you emerging now. And when you break these agreements, not with force, but with awareness, the entire structure of your former reality begins to dissolve. People sense the shift. Some are drawn closer, almost magnetically, because they feel something in you that mirrors something rising in them. Others pull away, not out of hatred, but because your presence threatens the stability of their old patterns. You are no longer a match for the versions of themselves they're trying to protect. This distancing isn't rejection, it's energetic sorting. The universe is clearing your field for what comes next. And then as the noise fades, a new kind of silence appears. Not emptiness, space. Space for creation. Space for alignment. Space for the timeline that has been following you, waiting for the moment your frequency matches its structure. In this silence, you begin to feel the pull of your higher potential, not as a dream, but as an inevitability. You sense the new world forming around you. Moment by moment, decision by decision, frequency by frequency. You're no longer stepping out of the old timeline. You're stepping into the one that was always meant for you. There comes a point in the transition where the universe begins communicating with you so directly, so unmistakably, that you can no longer pretend it's coincidence. Patterns that once seemed random start aligning with mathematical precision. Synchronicities begin stacking on top of each other like coded messages. Numbers, symbols, dreams. Sensations, all of them forming a language your soul recognizes even if your mind struggles to translate it. This is the stage where reality stops being a backdrop and starts behaving like an interactive field responding to your frequency. You think of someone and they contact you. You imagine an outcome, and the universe rearranges itself to deliver it. You ask for confirmation, and the answer arrives instantly through a sign, a message, a shift in the environment that feels almost scripted. Not because you're special, but because you're tuned. Your consciousness has reached the bandwidth where feedback is immediate. But with this heightened responsiveness comes a deeper responsibility. You begin to notice that every thought carries weight. Every emotion broadcasts a frequency. Every intention sets trajectories that ripple outward. You feel the consequences of misalignment faster. Fear manifests obstacles. Doubt collapses opportunities. But clarity opens portals that didn't exist seconds before. And so you start choosing differently. Not because you're trying to improve your life, but because you feel the direct energetic impact of every internal state. You become more discerning with what you allow into your field. You stop engaging with chaos that doesn't belong to you. You pull your energy away from anything that drains your frequency, not as avoidance, but as alignment. During this phase, your future self starts drawing closer, like a gravitational force. You feel versions of you that already exist, expanded, liberated, aligned, pressing against the edges of your current identity. They whisper through intuition, through sudden insights, through impulses that seem irrational, to your logical mind but unmistakably correct, to your higher awareness. This isn't imagination, it's timeline convergence. The quantum field is narrowing your path, guiding you toward the frequency where your highest trajectory becomes inevitable. And then something remarkable happens. You stop trying to manifest. You start allowing, because you realize the things meant for you are not summoned. They are revealed when you rise to the frequency where they've always existed. You are no longer creating the new timeline. You are remembering it. There is a phase in the shift where your external world begins rearranging itself with such precision that you can feel timelines snapping into place, like magnetic tracks. Things that once required effort now fall into alignment without resistance. Things that once felt stable suddenly collapse with no warning. And instead of panicking, you recognize the pattern. You understand that the quantum field is optimizing your path. At this stage, the universe becomes ruthlessly efficient. Anything that cannot travel with you into the higher frequency timeline begins to dissolve. Not because it's negative, but because it's incompatible. Old habits lose their grip. Old identities feel too small. Old environments become energetically suffocating. You can feel your consciousness trying to expand beyond the structures you once considered home. This is where most people mistake collapse for punishment. But you begin to see the truth. The destruction isn't against you, it's clearing space for you. The universe removes what you won't release. It reorganizes what you've outgrown. It redirects you away from timelines where your potential would remain dormant. You don't lose anything that belongs to the frequency you're rising into. And in this chaos, something unexpected emerges. A growing sense of inner stillness. The more your external world shifts, the more your internal world stabilizes. You no longer chase certainty. You broadcast it. You no longer cling to outcomes. You attract them. You no longer question the timing. You feel the timing. This inner stillness is not calm, it's power. The power that comes from alignment with higher intelligence. During this phase, your guidance becomes undeniable. Dreams become messages. Intuition becomes instruction. Sensations become signals. The universe stops whispering and starts speaking in unmistakable frequencies that bypass the mind entirely and land directly in your awareness. You know things before they happen. You recognize detours before they appear. You sense openings before they materialize. You're not predicting the future, you're sensing the timeline you're already stepping into. And then the most profound shift occurs. You stop trying to hold on to the life you had. You begin preparing for the life that's approaching. Your energy stops flowing backward into memories and begins flowing forward into potential. You feel a pull, a calling, a momentum toward something that your physical senses can't yet detect. But your soul recognizes instantly. This isn't hope. This isn't imagination. This is resonance. You are aligning with the version of Earth that matches your frequency. The separation has already begun, and your consciousness has already chosen its direction. There's a moment in the ascent where your perception of time begins to fracture. Not chaotically, but intelligently, purposefully. Linear time stops feeling like a straight line and starts behaving more like a fluid field. You move through, rather than something that moves past you. You notice stretches of time accelerating into fast forward, while other moments freeze into strange pockets of stillness, as though the universe is teaching you that time is not a ruler, it's a frequency. At first, this feels disorienting. Days blur, hours vanish, and certain memories feel closer than events from yesterday. But gradually, a deeper understanding reveals itself. You're no longer fully anchored to third-dimensional time. Your consciousness is beginning to operate in fifth-dimensional rhythm, where time bends to awareness, not awareness to time. This is why manifestations happen faster, why intuition arrives before logic, why you sense events before they unfold. Your timeline is responding to you instead of you responding to it. And then another shift becomes undeniable. You begin to feel your future self not as a possibility, but as a presence, a living frequency. A version of you that already exists in the higher band of reality, pulling you forward with a force stronger than motivation, recognition. You start experiencing flashes of déjà vu, but not the kind that hints at the past. These are glimpses of alignment, moments where you momentarily sync with the timeline you're stepping into. You might feel sudden surges of energy, bursts of clarity, or moments of overwhelming peace that appear without cause. These aren't mood swings, they're calibrations. Your field is being tuned. Your nervous system is being rewired. Your identity is being upgraded to handle the frequency of the reality you're entering. The people who resonate with your future timeline begin appearing. Conversations shift. Opportunities cluster. Paths converge. It feels like the universe is rearranging itself around you, closing doors you no longer need and opening ones you never expected.
And you realize the split isn't
Happening somewhere. Out there, it's happening. Inside you first. The old version of you can't enter the new earth. The old frequency can't cross the threshold. The old timeline can't carry the weight of who you're becoming. This is the final shedding, the dissolution of the last attachments, the last illusions, the last fragments of an identity that belonged to a world you're no longer aligned with. You begin to understand why certain things had to fall apart, why certain people couldn't stay, why certain paths closed no matter how tightly you tried to hold on to them. It wasn't loss. It was preparation. The universe wasn't taking anything from you. It was clearing the runway. Because what's coming next requires your full frequency, unburdened, undistracted, unanchored to anything that vibrates below the threshold of the world you're about to enter. This is the culmination, the moment where the bifurcation becomes undeniable, where the threshold you've been approaching, your entire life stretches before you, like a doorway of pure frequency. You no longer wonder if the shift is real. You no longer ask whether you are ready. You feel it in every cell, in every thought, in every pulse of your consciousness. You are vibrating at a resonance that aligns with the new earth, the fifth dimensional expression of reality that exists simultaneously in the same physical space but is entirely separate, energetically from the collapsing third dimensional construct. The old timeline still exists around you, but you experience it differently. You see it as dense, slow, fragmented, and heavy. You witness the chaos, the repetition, the fear-driven patterns, but they no longer define your experience. You move through the same streets, the same cities, the same physical coordinates, yet your perception is fundamentally altered. You are now inhabiting a world that functions by different laws. Non-linear time, malleable matter, probability collapsing almost instantaneously into form because your consciousness resonates with higher frequency quantum potential. Your interactions with others become profoundly revealing. Some people cannot perceive you anymore, not because they are gone, but because their consciousness exists on a frequency you no longer inhabit. Simultaneously, new presences appear in your life, people who feel inexplicably familiar, connections that are instantaneous, as if recognition transcends linear experience. These are the clusters of resonance forming the early architecture of the 1%, the emergent network of consciousness prepared to stabilize the new earth. Everything you experience now is a reflection of alignment. Synchronicities confirm your path. Intuition is undeniable. Manifestation is immediate. The quantum field is no longer an abstraction. It is a living system, responsive and co-creative. And the clarity of this reality allows you to release the final residues of the old world, old fears, old attachments, old illusions. Nothing remains that cannot vibrate with the new timeline. This moment also reveals the truth behind all prophecy, all ancient teaching, all spiritual metaphor, the ascension, the emergence into a fifth world, the rapture, the collective awakening. These are not stories or allegories. They are descriptions of quantum reality from different perspectives. They describe what you are experiencing now. Consciousness reaches the threshold. Earth splits. Frequencies separate, and those whose vibration matches the emergent frequency transition seamlessly into the new reality. And now here you are, reading these words, feeling the recognition, feeling the electric resonance coursing through your awareness. You are no longer a participant in the old earth. You are a navigator of the new. You are among the 1%.